Today, first we are going to have a look at the elements of fiction. So, the literary elements in fiction are plot, character, setting, point of view, symbol, and theme. Now, in fact, we have discussed these elements previously. Today, we are just going to discuss a little more about plot. But for the rest of the elements, we already have discussed them. So characters are the individuals in a novel or in a short story. They are the ones who perform actions or who play a role in the development of the story. They could be human characters. In some cases, they could be non-human characters too. Setting is the physical context of an action. So setting could be a drawing room. It could be a hospital. It could be a playground. It could be a kitchen, depending on where the action takes place. Point of view. Very often the writers have a point of view and they present that point of view through the characters. Symbol. Some of the objects in a text that we deal with, they stand for more than what they are. They have kind of dual meaning. So for example, water can stand for peace. Rose can stand for love. In both cases, water and rose, they are symbols. Themes. Themes are the main ideas in a literary text, which have some philosophical basis too. So some novel or short stories might have the theme of determination, perseverance, fate, love, humanization, dehumanization, and sometimes melancholy, sadness. But the way I'm telling you, these words themselves are not theme. Okay, these are just examples of what themes may look like. So you always have to describe the theme a little bit. Okay, it's not possible just to name the theme under one word. So for example, I cannot just say fate is its theme. I have to describe it a little bit. So I might say that the theme of this play or the theme of this particular novel or fiction is that fate overrules human actions. Okay, so a little bit more descriptive than just one word. So we have discussed these things. So let's begin with the plot today, which is the major element to be discussed today. So the plot is in fact a sequence of events. So plot is probably the most important element in a fiction, prose fiction. So as some of you just said that prose fiction is a novel or a short story. So from that you already have an idea what a novel or short story looks like. Even if you haven't read any, I'm sure you know what short stories and novels look like, right? So there is always a story in them. And the story needs to be told in a sequence to be meaningful. That is why the various steps of the action, they are put in a particular sequence. And that sequence is called plot. The plot needs to be believable even if it is not realistic. So the writer of the novel presents the plot in such a manner that it seems to be believable, even if it is not realistic. So there is a very famous novella, Old Man and the Sea. Many of you must have read it or known about it or heard about it. If not you, then students like in last 4, 5, 6 years, uh, especially before this 4 year degree started in universities, everybody used to do a BA exam through the University of Punjab. Okay, that time there was no concept of 4 year degree, and they used to have this novella Old Man and the Sea as a required text. I believe still if 2 year degree is available from Punjab University, still the same text is there. It is by Ernest Hemingway, who is an American writer. So the novel The Old Man and the Sea, it is about an old man who captures a big whale and then he brings it back from the depths of sea. He brings it back to the shore. And while he brings it back to the shore, he is attacked by this by the groups of whales. Oh, sorry, by the groups of sharks, right? And he gets badly injured, and uh, so much so that when he reaches the beach, almost all the meat, right? Almost all the meat from the whale has been eaten away by the sharks, right? And he reaches the beach just with the skeleton, right? Now, the writer has described all details in so much detail, in so much depth, and he has made everything so vivid and visible that the whole thing that we read, we never question it. It it appears to be believable because the writer makes it sound like believable. Okay, even if it may not be realistic, it sounds unrealistic for an old man of a fragile body to keep fighting against the sharks for I don't know how many hours. I think it was 12 hours or how many hours. So he keeps fighting with the sharks all alone in the boat in a big ocean without eating anything himself, right? So that seems to be unrealistic, but still it is believable. So when you read the story, you don't question whether or not it is true. Okay, so this kind of sense of trueness, right, which is there in a novel, it is called basically it is called its feasibility, all or its believability. Okay, even if it is not realistic. I hope you understand this point from with reference to lot many movies that you see every other day. All right, look at the Spider-Man for example. Okay, so kids and sometimes grown-ups also love to watch that film, right? Spider-Man, I think, is an extreme example. Every other film that you watch has a lot many action in it, which is not realistic. Do you agree? Yeah. Is
Yes,
that
sir.
your is that your observation too?
Yes, sir.
In every other film, the action is not realistic, right? Uh, you know, uh, Some of the violent action that takes place, in most of the cases, it is not realistic, right? But still we watch it. Why do we watch it? You will say for entertainment, right? But in order to get entertainment, you first need to believe in it. So what does that mean? That means we keep believing in the content of whatever we watch, even if we know it is not real. Okay, so the plot of the film should be believable, and the writer or the producer or the director, it is their responsibility to make it sound like believable so that the audience gets hooked by the sequence of the events. And they shouldn't say, no, I can't, I don't want to watch it. It is so, it, it sounds a pure lie, right? So nobody stops watching a film because it is a lie. Why? Because the director has made it believable. So remember that to be believable, something doesn't have to be true as well, right? To be believable, something doesn't have to be realistic, right? These are two separate things, right? So generally speaking, whenever we say we believe in something, our belief is in something which is not real, right? So anyways, plot should sound like believable. Plot sometimes has flashbacks as well. That is actually a kind of plot where while the action is being performed by characters, the characters keep to imagine something which happened in the past. And when they imagined what happened in the past, we as the readers are able to read that as well, whatever happened to the characters in the past. So the action is taking place in present. Okay, so you might have seen one very common example both in drama, film, and novel too, if you have read those kind of novels, where you see a character who is a character, right? Character sitting and writing. Okay, maybe the character is writing a diary only, maybe is writing a journal, right? And while that character writes the journal, whatever is in the journal is actually dramatized right in front of our eyes. What is happening over here? Over here, the flashback plot is being used, right? So the character who is sitting in front of us and writing keeps sitting over there, but goes back in imagination through the diary or journal that writer is writing, goes back into their own past. And that past is shown to us, the viewers or the readers. The other kind of plot is called foreshadowing plot. That is where characters imagine their future, what might happen in future. Okay, so through the action, we are able to predict what is going to come next. Generally speaking, the structure of plot is like this. It is included in your reading as well. You can see it over there too. So plot begins with an exposition, right? And end at a denouement. So exposition is the initial introduction of the action. A little bit introduction of the setting, a little bit introduction of the characters. It's kind of, entrance into the scene. We get to know what is going to happen. It's called exposition. And then there is a little bit incitement Okay, an inciting incident takes place, which immediately captures our interest. And then from there, the action starts taking momentum. It's called rising action. And then the rising action reaches its climax. It's called turning point. And then from there, the action starts losing its momentum. Call it falling action, unless it reaches a resolution. So resolution is the point where we reach the conclusion of the story. And that conclusion is called denouement. So exposition and denouement, they are kind of opposite to each other. Exposition is the beginning and denouement is the ending of the story. But all this is visible, or all this is traceable through the plot. Okay, now let's read a story right now. And the only question that you should have while reading this story is to trace its plot. So let's point just three things over there. Where is the exposition? Where is the climax? And where is the denouement? I'll show the story right away. So you have this story with you already, okay? It is in the readings. So here is, oh no, not this. Sorry. Here is the reading. Here is the story. So anybody like to read the story for the class starting from here? The title of the story is One of These Days by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. Any student who would like to read the story aloud? So while that student will read, we will just keep our mics mute and listen to the story. And then uh, I'll be interrupting for a few questions. Yes, who would like to read?
I'll read, sir.
Please go ahead. I'll share the screen, but you can use your own uh, text as well if you want. Please go ahead.
Let's look at a short story, One of These Days, by Gabriel Garcia Marquez, a Nobel Prize winning author. Sir, the screen just caught up. All right. From Colombia. Monday dawned warm and rainless. Aurelio Escobar, a dentist without a degree and a very early riser, opened his office at 6. He took some false teeth, still mounted in their plaster mold, out of the glass case and put on the table a fistful of instruments which he arranged in size order as if they were on display. He wore a collarless striped shirt, close at the neck, with a golden stud, and pants held up by suspenders. He was erect and skinny, with a look that really corresponded to the situation, the way deaf people have of looking. When he had things arranged on the table,
Okay, so can you tell me anything about the setting right from the beginning? What kind of setting do you anticipate here in the story?
So the bedroom?
Are you sure? Look at the first
Oh,
line.
oh, is it a dentist clinic?
Yep, right. Also, you can, it's not just the first line, there are other things as well. So are there, can you see other things which can show that it is a dentist clinic?
So the instruments
Yeah,
and
yeah, and false teeth.
glass case.
Yeah, all right. So please continue to read.
When he had things When he had things arranged on the table, he pulled the drill toward the dental chair and sat down to polish the false teeth. He seemed not to be thinking about what he was doing, but worked steadily, pumping the drill with his feet, even when he didn't need it. After 8, he stopped for a while to look at the sky through the window, and he saw two pensive buzzards who were drying themselves in the sun under the ridge pole of the house next door. He went on working with the idea that before lunch it would rain again. The shrill voice of his 11-year-old son interrupted the concentration. Papa, what? The mayor wants to know if you'll pull his tooth. Tell him I'm not here. He was polishing a gold tooth. He held it at a arm's length and examined it with his eyes half closed. His son shouted again from the little waiting room. He says you are too, because he can hear you. The dentist kept examining the tooth, and only when he had put it on the table with the finished work did he say, "So much the better." He operated the drill again. He took several pieces of a bridge out of the cardboard box where he kept the things he still had to do and began to polish the gold. Papa, what? He still hadn't changed his expression. He says if you don't take out his tooth, he'll shoot you. Without hurrying,
Okay, so now the, so you might feel over here that there is a little transition. Okay, so can anybody point out what kind of transition did you? There is a little change over here in this line. He says if you don't take out his tooth, he will shoot you. So can you try to elaborate anybody what kind of change do you feel here? There is a change in the way there was, the action was being described by now. Or in other words, if I rephrase my question, what will you call the part of the story before line 15?
it was very calm before that. The atmosphere was very calm, and now it's suddenly very serious.
Okay, so what name can you give to the first line, the first 15 lines? Technically, what is this?
Exposition.
Yeah, so this is an exposition, right? So it's a kind of introduction of the setting and the scene and the characters, right? Uh, and it's kind of entry into the scene, okay? Our entry, the reader's entry into the scene, okay? So once we have entered the scene, right? So we can see what is going on. So there is dentist's office and there's a dentist without a degree, right? So a dentist without a degree would mean uh, he probably doesn't look like a proper professional, right? So he has a little shabby dressing and all that, and then he has a son too, right? So as you rightly said that the exposition part or the first 15 lines they were pretty calm. Okay, we can say that almost there was no action except the conversation. Okay, so what is the first action which is mentioned over here, even if it does not take place, even if it does not take place, but the first action, the proper action that takes place, or that kind of that we can anticipate over here is the action of shooting, right? So that is a sudden shock. He says if you don't take out his tooth, he will shoot you, right? So students, you might have observed the change of tone over here, and that is so sudden, right? So uh, it would be very rare to listen anybody being shot down for not pulling out the tooth. Okay, so now this change, I just want you to understand that this change is what we call inciting incident. So can you see this on your screen? The graph. So this is graphic representation of plot. Okay. This whole thing. So whenever anybody asks you to describe the plot, you will always describe the plot like this. You will say that it has this kind of exposition, and then on this point, inciting incident takes place. Okay. And what is the inciting incident? The mentioning of shooting. Okay. And then from there, you will feel how the action rises. So let's see how the action rises in the story.
Without hurrying, with an extremely tranquil movement, he stopped pedaling the drill, pushed it away from the chair, and pulled the lower drawer of the table all the way out. There was a revolver. Okay, he said. Tell him to come and shoot me. He rolled the chair over opposite the door.
So do you feel the rising of the action?
Yes.
Yes.
What is it that makes you think the action is rising?
The presence of a revolver in his drawer.
Yeah, which he confirmed, right? So when he receives the threat of getting shot, right, in line 16, that threat was not very clear to us. We might assume that it was just a joke, right? But by the end of this paragraph, we are certain that the threat of shoot was real, right?
Yeah.
It was not a joke, because the dentist also made sure that he had a revolver to defend himself, right? So this rising action, another word which is not on the slide and but you can take it down, is called rising tension in the action. Okay, so the tension in the action is rising, right? So this is how the plot progresses. And it's a kind of, we can't call it universal, but it is the most common structure of a plot in any short story or fiction. So let's see where does this rising action take us. Please continue to read.
He rolled the chair over opposite the door, his head, his, his hand resting on the edge of the door. The mayor opened the door. He had shaved the left side of his face, but the other side, swollen and in pain, had a 5-day-old beard. The dentist saw many nights of desperation in his dull eyes. He closed the drawer with his fingertips and said softly, "Sit down." "Good morning," said the mayor. "Morning," said the dentist. While the instruments were boiling, the mayor leaned his skull on the headrest of the chair and felt better. His breath was icy. It was a poor office, an old wooden chair, the pedal drill, a glass case with ceramic bottles. Opposite the chair was a window with a shoulder high cloth curtain. When he felt the dentist approach, the mayor braced his heels and opened his mouth. Aurelio Escobar turned his head toward the light. After inspecting the infected tooth, he closed the mare's jaw with a cautious pressure of his fingers. "It has to be without anesthesia," he said. "Why?" "Because you have an abscess." The mayor looked him in the eye. "All right," he said, and tried to smile. The dentist did not return the smile. He brought the basin of the sterilized instruments to the work table and took them out of water with a pair of cold tweezers, still without hurrying. Then he pushed the spittoon with the tip of his shoe and went to wash his hands in the wash basin. He did all this without looking at the mayor, but the mayor didn't take his eyes off him.
Okay, so by now, I'm sure you are constantly feeling the action in constant tension, right? So the tension is between the dentist and the mayor. Okay, so you don't feel a natural, normal relationship that a doctor and patient usually have. I mean, in a very general setting, in most of the cases, as professionally it is required, a dentist or a doctor is supposed to be polite to the patient, and there shouldn't be any kind of anxiety on either part. Okay, but we do feel that Mayor, is constantly in some sense of suspicion. So he is not taking his eyes off the dentist, right? On the other hand, the dentist is not very happy to receive this patient in the office. Okay, so that means the relation between both of them is not as it usually is, or as it usually should be. Rather, it is a tensed relationship. So there doesn't seem to be yet any kind of uh, uh, courtesy, right? Which is often between a patient, doctor, and their patient. Okay, so in other words, the action is still rising. Yes, please continue.
It was a lower wisdom tooth. The dentist spread his feet and grasped the tooth with the hot forceps. The mayor seized the arms of the chair, braced his feet with all his strength, and felt an icy void in his kidneys, but didn't make a sound. The dentist moved only his wrist. Without rancor, rather with a bitter tenderness, he said, "Now you'll pay for our 20 dead men." The mayor felt the crunch of bones in his jaw and his eyes filled with tears, but he didn't breathe until he felt the tooth come out. Then he saw it through his tears. It seemed so foreign to his pain that he failed to understand his torture of the 5 previous nights. Bent over the spittoon, sweating, panting, he unbuttoned his tunic and reached for the handkerchief in his pants pocket. The dentist gave him a clean cloth. "Dry your tears," he said. The mayor did. He was trembling. While the dentist washed his hands, he saw the crumbling ceiling of a dusty spider web with the spider's eggs and dead insects. The dentist returned, drying his hands. "Go to bed," he said, "and gargle with salt water." The mayor stood up, said goodbye with a casual military salute, and walked toward the door, stretched his legs without buttoning up his tunic. Send the bill," he said. "To you or the town?" The mayor didn't look at him. He closed the door and said through the screen, "It's the same damn thing."
All right. So where do you feel the action to be at its climax?
When he says, "Now you'll pay for our 20 dead men."
Okay, maybe right there, or maybe right
When he
after
was
that.
taking out the tooth?
Yeah. So yeah, that is probably I would see uh, as the proper climax of the action. So when the dentist say, "No, you will pay for our 20 dead men," basically both the mayor and we the readers, both of us get prepared to see what is going to happen, right? So this line, "Now you will pay for our 20 dead men," this line actually prepares us to see the climax, right? And the climax comes with the tooth coming out, right? So probably that is the most torturous or the most significant action or the most serious action that takes place in the whole story, which is pulling out of the teeth from the jaw, right? So that qualifies to be the climax. And then as we see that climax starts, boiling down a little bit when there is focus on other things. So he was trembling while the dentist washed his hands. He saw the crumbling ceiling and a dusty spider, right? So even the mayor is able to think about the things other than his tooth, which is his own surrounding. And then dentist is able to advise to the mayor something which is other than tooth, which is go to bed now. Okay, gargle with salt water, right? So gargling with salt water and going to bed, what does it imply? Does it imply attention or does it imply rest? So what does this imply? Going to bed and gargling your teeth with salt water. So what does this imply? Go to bed and gargle with salt water. Tension or release? Relief.
Release.
Okay, right? So it is for the first time in the story that a reverse movement starts. Okay, so look at it starting from here. Dry your tears, right? So it's an act of calming down, right? So starting from here, then we notice that there is a reversal in action. So look at this graph once again. After the climax, there is falling action unless a resolution reaches. Okay, so what kind of resolution? Resolution between those characters who were engaged in any kind of conflict. Okay, so irrespective of the nature of the conflict, we do realize that there is some kind of conflict between the dentist and the mayor. It is not a simple common procedure of pulling out the tooth. It is something more than that. And there is a pre-existing conflict between these two characters. And that conflict has been translated into this story. So starting from dry your tears, right? So so what kind of reverse movement has started now? What kind of reverse movement in the action has started now from this line, dry your tears? Is it the rising action or is it the falling action?
The falling
Falling
action.
action.
Good. Okay. So the action is now falling down because when one character, which is dentist, is suggesting calm and comfort to the other character, that means, in fact, now the tension is going to release itself. And therefore, the action is not going to rise further. Rather, it is going to fall in its intensity. Right? So, starting from dry your tears, there are all those suggestions from the dentist to the mayor, which will provide relief to the mayor. So over here, the story ends. Uh, the mayor stood up, said goodbye with a casual military salute, and walked toward the door, stretching his legs without buttoning up his tunic. Send the bill, he said, to you or the town, right? So, because that person is a mayor, therefore, the mayor has an office in town as well. So, the question is where it should come to you in person, that is a personal bill, or should it come to the office? And the mayor, without looking at him, replies through the screen, window screen or the door screen, is the same damn thing. So it's not that they have turned into friends. That has not happened, right? They're still on the same terms. But that one episode where the action gets momentum and then reaches its climax and comes down, that one episode has completed itself, right? So students, this is an example of a short story that what we have just read. And through that, we have observed how the action, how the plot in a short story uh, appears as a sequence of events, right? And how we can trace in a short story the exposition, rising action, climax, falling action, resolution, and denouement. So denouement, in fact, is the returning to the normal, okay, returning to its uh, initial phase, okay. So you might feel over here it is the same damn thing. The tone of the mayor's implies that the nature of the relationship between mayor and the dentist have come down to the same initial point where it started from, okay. So they are still on unpleasant terms with each other, right? But that that extreme tension that had risen because of the mayor's pain, that has now fallen down. Okay,